The night was cold, but her heart was colder. Rain slid down her trembling fingers as she stood under the streetlight, mascara bleeding down her cheeks, her soul whispering a truth she had tried so hard to ignore. Some people just don't belong together, no matter how much they love. She looked up at him, the man who had once been her reason to smile at the smallest things, the man whose laughter used to make her world brighter, and whispered with a quivering voice, "I don't fit into your world." And for a long, aching silence, the only sound between them was the rain, falling, relentless, like the tears they both refused to let go. Then he took one step closer, eyes burning with something deeper than pain. His voice broke the night like a fragile promise. "Then I'll build one around you." The words hung between them, trembling, tender, and powerful enough to silence every doubt that had been killing her slowly inside. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and love that never gives up, hit the like button, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe to our channel. Let's keep stories of hope alive. Ava had never belonged anywhere. Not truly. She had grown up in a small, quiet town, where dreams were considered a kind of rebellion and love was something people whispered about in secret. She worked long shifts at a dusty bookstore on Main Street, saving every penny to one day leave that place, the kind of place where hope was a luxury, not a language. And then, one autumn afternoon he walked in, Ethan Rivera, the kind of man who didn't just walk into a room, he changed the temperature of it. He was the CEO of a rising design firm, dressed in effortless elegance, eyes full of stories and sleepless nights. He had come into her shop searching for a book he couldn't even remember the name of, but when he looked up and met her eyes, he forgot why he had come in the first place. Ava was not the kind of woman who turned heads, but she had a presence that lingered. There was something fragile yet fierce about her, like a candle trying to stay lit in the wind. Ethan saw that, and for the first time in years he wanted to protect something more than his empire. He came back the next day, and the next. Sometimes he'd buy books he never read just to see her smile. Sometimes he'd stand at the counter pretending to browse, just to hear her talk about things she loved, the scent of old paper, forgotten stories, and the beauty of people who tried even when life didn't try for them. They were opposites, a world apart. He belonged to champagne galas and sharp suits. She belonged to quiet places, the kind where hearts healed in silence. But somehow, in that tiny bookstore, they found a middle ground. And it wasn't long before that middle ground became everything. Their love didn't happen all at once. It grew quietly, in the way she saved him a book she thought he'd like, in the way he'd bring her coffee without asking how she took it, in the way their eyes lingered a little too long when they said goodbye. But love, real love, has a way of testing people. When Ethan's world discovered Ava, it didn't welcome her. She wasn't the right kind of woman. She didn't wear designer dresses. She didn't know how to smile for cameras or charm his investors. His friends whispered that she was a phase, something beneath him. His mother called her a mistake, and Ava felt every word like a cut she couldn't hide. She tried to blend in, tried to learn his world, but every dinner, every event, every polished smile made her feel smaller. She didn't know how to talk about stock prices or fashion trends. She didn't laugh at the same jokes. And when she'd look at Ethan across the table, surrounded by people who looked perfect, she'd feel like a stain in a painting that was never meant to include her. The more she tried to fit in, the more invisible she became. And Ethan, caught between love and loyalty, began to change too. His words grew shorter, his nights longer. He'd cancel plans, saying work had piled up, but she knew what that really meant. He was slipping into the comfort of the world that had always accepted him. Until one night, she couldn't do it anymore. They had gone to a formal event, one of those glittering, soulless rooms filled with laughter that didn't reach anyone's eyes. She stood by his side, smiling politely, wearing a borrowed gown and shoes that hurt more than her heart. She heard the whispers again. "She's sweet, but she's not one of us. He'll get over her." And that night, when they got back to his penthouse, she finally broke. She stood by the window, tears blurring the city lights below, and said the words she had been swallowing for months. "I don't fit into your world, Ethan." He froze. For a moment the air between them stopped moving, and she went on, her voice shaking but sure. I've really tried, but your world doesn't see me, it swallows me, and I can't spend my life feeling like I'm not enough." He wanted to argue, wanted to promise her things would change, but deep down he knew she was right. He had let her drown in a place she didn't belong, and as she turned to leave, the words left his lips like a prayer. "Then I'll build one around you." At first, she didn't believe him. But Ethan wasn't a man of empty promises. The next day, he resigned from 2 of his boards. He stopped going to the meaningless dinners, stopped pretending to care about people who didn't care about him. And one morning, he walked into her bookstore, not in a suit, but in jeans, holding a small box of paper cranes. Inside each folded crane was a note. Memories of their moments, promises he had written in silence. "I don't want a world where you feel small," he told her softly. "I want one where you shine." Ava broke down. Not because of grand gestures or poetic words, but because for the first time, someone had chosen her over everything else. They started building a life that made sense for them. Quiet mornings, shared laughter over burnt pancakes, evenings filled with soft music and no expectations. He invested in her bookstore, turning it into a community space for readers and dreamers. Together, they hosted events for children who couldn't afford books, giving them stories that could make them believe in something again. Ethan found peace in simplicity. Ava found strength in being seen. But happiness, even when real, isn't always easy. The world they had left behind didn't stop talking. There were rumors, judgments, and temptations. Sometimes Ethan doubted if walking away had been the right choice. Sometimes Ava feared he'd grow tired of her slower, smaller life. Yet every time those fears rose between them, they found each other again. He'd hold her close and whisper, "You're my home." And she'd believe him, not because he said it, but because he proved it, every single day. Months turned into years. Their bookstore became a symbol in the city, a place built out of love and rebellion, where people came not to buy stories, but to feel them. They called it the world we built. And whenever anyone asked about the name, Ethan would smile quietly and say, "Because once, someone I loved thought she didn't belong in mine." Then came the night that tested everything. A fire, sudden, violent, unforgiving, broke out in the bookstore. Ethan was away at a meeting he couldn't cancel. By the time he reached there, the building was in flames. People were shouting, firefighters battling the inferno, and for a horrifying moment he thought he had lost her. But then he saw her, sitting on the curb covered in soot, clutching a half-burned book to her chest. Her eyes met his, and in that moment, nothing else mattered. He ran to her, fell to his knees, pulled her into his arms, and whispered like a man who had almost lost his soul, "I told you I'd build a world around you. I didn't say it had to stay made of walls." The bookstore was gone. But in the weeks that followed, so many people came to help rebuild it. Readers, strangers, even the same ones who had once mocked them. It turned out, love like theirs had left its mark on more hearts than they realized. When the new store finally opened, Ava stood at the door, hand in Ethan's, eyes full of tears and light. The sign above them read, "The world we built, for those who feel they don't belong." And for the first time, Ava didn't feel like a guest in someone else's story. She felt like the author of her own. Because love, true love, isn't about fitting into someone's world. It's about creating one together, where both hearts can breathe, where no one has to shrink to be loved, where no one has to hide to be seen. Ethan had promised her a world, and in the end, he gave her more. A home made of understanding, forgiveness, and unshakable devotion. And she gave him something no success ever had, peace. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps us creating stories that remind the world what love truly means. Before you go, tell us in the comments, would you choose to stay in a world where you don't belong, or build a new one with someone who truly sees you? Because sometimes, the bravest thing love can do is start over.